The Mountain is You, Brianna Wiest, a deep philosophical and conceptual summary. The central metaphor, the mountain, is self. At the core of Wiest's philosophy stands a single metaphor: the mountain is you. The mountain represents every obstacle, limitation, and fear one faces in life, but rather than being an external adversary, it is an inner structure built from layers of belief, memory, trauma, and defense. In this metaphor, climbing the mountain does not mean conquering the world. It means ascending one's own inner terrain, the steep slopes of self deception, the cold air of discomfort, and the summit of awakening. Vista defines the struggle. It is not something that happens to us, but something that happens through us. Every challenge is a reflection of the parts of us still waiting to be understood. Thus, the mountain is not an enemy to be overcome, but a mirror to be seen, a teacher of the soul. To climb it is not to win, it is to remember who you already are. The philosophy of self sabotage. Waste begins by dismantling the common idea that self sabotage is mere weakness or laziness. She sees it instead as a form of self protection, an unconscious attempt to preserve the familiar identity of the self. To understand this, she invites us to view the psyche as a living organism whose first law is safety, not success. Thus, the self sabotaging mind resists change not because it hates growth, but because it fears annihilation, the death of who it has known itself to be. Philosophically, this idea is rooted in the paradox of identity. The self both desires transformation and fears it because to change is to dissolve. The mountain is therefore the meeting point between evolution and resistance, the boundary between who we have been and who we are meant to become. Waste's insight is profoundly existential. Self sabotage is the ego's defense against the soul's expansion. The task, then, is not to destroy resistance, but to understand its sacred function, to decode its message. Pain as a messenger. One of the most poetic undercurrents of the book is the reverence for pain as intelligent force. Vista suggests that pain is not punishment, but communication, the language through which the deeper self speaks. She writes that pain often appears when we have been living out of alignment with our truth. In this sense, pain becomes sacred, a compass pointing toward authenticity. To philosophically grasp this, one must move from the question, why is this happening to me, to what is this revealing within me? In Weist's universe, nothing is random. Every wound, rejection, or failure contains encoded wisdom, a lesson the soul requires for evolution. This transforms suffering from something to escape into something to be integrated. Pain, then, is not a wall, but a doorway. It burns away illusion until only what is real remains. The vision aligns with ancient mystical traditions, from the Stoics to the Buddhists. The view suffering as the crucible of awakening. Weist modernizes this truth in her own voice, writing with gentle precision that your mountain is the part of you that keeps avoiding itself. The shadow within. Much of Weist's philosophy echoes Jung's idea of the shadow, the unconscious aspects of ourselves we deny, repress, or disown. She portrays self sabotage as the shadow's rebellion, the cry of unintegrated emotion demanding acknowledgement. Every time we suppress grief, anger, shame, or fear, we do not dissolve them, we internalize them. They become subterranean energies shaping our choices and reactions. Thus, the mountain grows not from external hardship but from internal avoidance. Philosophically, this represents the duality within the self, the battle between the conscious identity, the persona, and the unconscious truth, the shadow. To face the mountain, then, is to face the shadow, to step into the cavern of one's own denied emotions and look directly into their eyes. West's approach here is not moralistic, it is alchemical. She sees darkness not as evil, but as raw, misunderstood light, unprocessed power waiting to be integrated. Just as the alchemist transforms base metal into gold, the awakened individual transforms pain into awareness. And this process, she insists, is the climb, the collapse of the old self. Every true transformation begins with collapse. West describes moments of breakdown not as signs of failure but as gestures of truth. The moment the old self disintegrates under the pressure of becoming. Philosophically, this is the law of death and rebirth, the ancient rhythm of existence. Just as a seed must crack from a tree to emerge, the self must shatter for a soul to expand. She writes that most people fear this collapse because they have been taught that stability equals safety. But the soul's nature is dynamic, it seeks movement, growth, expansion. Thus, when life begins to crumble, it may be an act of grace, not punishment. This echoes Heraclitus's idea that the path up and down are one and the same. The mountain summit and its base are reflections of one process. Ascent and descent both serve awakening. To lose what no longer serves is to return to what eternally is. Collapse is, therefore, sacred instruction, a divine correction of course. The conscious self and the witness, a subtle but crucial undercurrent in West philosophy, is the awakening of the witness consciousness, the ability to observe the self without identification. She invites readers to see emotions not as truths but as signals, waves passing through awareness. When one learns to witness without attachment, the mountain begins to dissolve, for the mountain, after all, is made of identification. Philosophically, this mirrors Advaita, Vedanta, and mindfulness traditions that say you are not your thoughts, you are the awareness in which thoughts arise. Waste Mountain, therefore, is a construct of illusion, sustained by unobserved patterns and unquestioned beliefs. When awareness arises, the structure begins to crumble. This is why she calls self awareness the beginning of self liberation. The climber realizes that the mountain is not solid stone, it is smoke and memory, and that the summit has always been within. Emotional intelligence as a spiritual intelligence. Though the book speaks of emotional intelligence, West's meaning is more metaphysical than psychological. For her, emotional intelligence is the art of understanding energy, the ability to sense the truth behind feelings, to read the subtle movement of consciousness. Emotions, in this sense, are currents of the soul, dynamic expressions of truth in motion. When denied, they stagnate. When accepted, they liberate. To be emotionally intelligent, therefore, is to be spiritually awake, to recognize that every emotion, no matter how painful, serves evolution to deeper truth, she reveals is this: emotional maturity is not control but surrender, not suppression but trust in the intelligence of life itself. The sacred paradox of growth. Vista returns often to paradox, the twin truths that we must both accept and change, surrender and act, rest and rise. This duality mirrors the structure of existence itself: creation and destruction, light and shadow, self and soul. She writes, "You don't climb the mountain so the world can see you, you climb it so you can see the world." This single line holds the essence of her philosophy. The purpose of the climb is not achievement but perception, not to be seen but to see. The mountain is the lens through which consciousness learns to behold itself. It is both obstacle and oracle, both the wound and the wisdom born from it. In climbing, one does not escape the self, one transcends it. The summit is not a destination, but an awakening. The realization that the climber and the mountain were never separate. Integration becoming the mountain. At the end of her journey, West envisions not conquering the mountain, but becoming it. To become the mountain means to embody stability, patience, and depth, to merge with the very thing once feared. It is a state of spiritual integration where resistance transforms into strength, pain into wisdom, and fragility into peace. Philosophically, this mirrors the mystical journey of individuation, the fusion of opposites into wholeness. The shadow merges with light, the ego surrenders to the soul, and the seeker becomes the sought. This transformation is not about transcendence but embodiment, grounding enlightenment into human life. To become the mountain is to realize that everything you sought outside was already within you. It is the end of striving and beginning of being. The mountain stands still not because it resists the world, but because it is the world, a living symbol of unity between struggle and serenity, the philosophy of wholeness. The book concludes with the return to wholeness, the realization that every fragment of the self was sacred all along. Nothing needed to be fixed, only understood. Nothing was wasted, everything was preparation. West philosophy, at its purest, teaches that the self is not a problem to solve but a mystery to embrace. The mountain exists so that we may climb, not to prove strength, but to remember stillness. The soul's journey, she suggests, is circular. We rise not to escape life, but to descend again, more conscious, more compassionate, more whole. Thus, the highest summit is humility, the peace of knowing that you were never broken, only becoming. The essence in a single reflection. If the mountain is you were condensed into one timeless reflection, it would be this: the mountain is not in your way, the mountain is the way. It is not separate from you, it is the part of you that must rise to meet itself.